Hello, girls, guys, or otherwise. This is Rich with your Witchy Book Club series here on Saturdays. We are going through lesson 3 of Modern Magic by Donald Michael Craig. If you do not have your copy, I do have a link down below. It is an Amazon link. I do encourage individuals to get their copy from a local witchy shop or local bookseller, but if you do not have that accessible to you, there is the link down below for Amazon. Uh, let's see, what else do we have? We have to go through. If you're not yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you get notified whenever new videos come out. A special thank you to our patrons on Patreon. We have Sophia from Sophia Brings Light. We have Linda and Tyler. Thank you very much. If you would also like to become a patron on Patreon, link is provided down below. It helps raise money so we can start this church here on YouTube and whatnot. You get these videos ahead of time. This one is coming the day before. Other ones come earlier than others, this and that and the other. It all depends on when I have time to record, edit, and upload them. I do have one especially for Patreon patrons on Patreon right now that needs to be edited and uploaded. For a specific review and reveal of a tarot deck that will be accessible to others later in the year. Anywho, let's see, what else? If you cannot support me on Patreon, totally understandable. If you would like to get something for your money and still support me as an individual, not necessarily the church as a whole, even though part of the funds will probably go towards the church, a link is below for the eBay store that I have. So you can go on down there, click on that link, and you can ask for discounts. I do discount quite often. Another way that you can help support this channel is by liking, subscribing, commenting. All those appeal to the algorithmic gods of YouTube. All hail the algorithmic gods of YouTube. And if it is accessible and safe for you to do so, you can also share that link to others in your social media feeds. So, without further ado, let's get into lesson 3 of Modern Magic by Donald Michael Craig. This starts on page 87. As per usual, we are going to look at the first sentence in the chapter to see how it really opens things up. And it reads, "We all read lots of things, from novels and magazines to advertisements, text messages, and graphic novels. Used to be called comic books." Okay, I don't really get the vibe of the entirety of the chapter from what we would be reading being expressed in this first sentence. I think this might be one of those things that were added in the later revised issue. This is, of course, the 12 lessons. The previous one was 11 lessons. If it is in that one, I am not sure. I don't have my copy anymore. So I'm not sure if that was added in that one. But it seems like an afterthought type of sentence that was put in here. So if it was in the older one, it doesn't really express the entirety of the chapter. I do, however, later on in this little section here, I do agree that, I believe his whole thing was to go back and review the lessons, the chapters, the sections that he has here. I'm pretty sure that's where he was going with this. So I do understand that. We do read a lot of things. We don't always absorb it. And on second reading, we get a lot more from it, which is why, whenever I'm reading sacred texts and whatnot, I tend to go back and reread because different things jump out at you depending on what stage you are in life and whatnot. As for witchy books, usually once I get through them, I'm pretty okay with the information. Usually whenever I go through a witchy book, I'll write down like, hey, I need to remember this. This is jumping out to me right now, and so on and so forth. A lot of times, like I've said before, I use these witchy books as references and kind of encyclopedias of sorts. So sometimes I don't read through the entirety of the book, but I will pick out pieces here and there of it. So, yeah, a lot of times, though, whenever I read a book, I pretty much have it down. I know what was said, and I got the overall gist of it. Um, this is something that I would need to consider, especially if I have a book like this on Audible to reread and reread it again. One one book that I got on Audible that I would like to reread is, I believe it's called Christian Mysticism, I think. And if I actually give myself a moment here, I can probably pull it up here. But anyway, um, yeah, that is a book that it is a fairly good book, especially on Audible. It's a good book to read. Let's see. Let me do finished. And I'm going to find it here. Oh, Inner Christianity by Richard Smalley. A good book overall. The narrator, I'm not sure if it's narrated by the author, if it is. So, yes, it is narrated by Richard Smalley. And if I'm mispronouncing the last name, I do apologize. He has a slower cadence to his reading style. He has a very calming type of reading style, very laid back, very relaxed. He isn't one that I would sit there and listen to on and on and on. I actually had to, when reading that, put it on like times 1.5 or times 2 to get through it, because listening to him drone on and on was a little hard for me. And you'll see that in different audiobooks and whatnot, that sometimes you need to speed them up because it's hard for them to capture your attention for too long. Next thing I wanted to touch on was on page 88. He says, I know in the West we're trained not to feel pride, but I remember a statement from Aleister Crowley, who wrote, an ounce of honest pride is better than a ton of false humility. Be proud of your accomplishments. However, that doesn't mean you should be egotistical. I still remember my martial arts instructor, Sifu Douglas Wong, saying, no matter how good you are, there's always someone better. So I wanted to touch on this because I think that he is totally right in part of this, or actually in the entirety of it. But there seems to be this humility that us, especially in the West, seem to think that we need to have. And unfortunately, that can be a little bit hindering on us as magical practitioners. We sit there and we say, well, who are we to do this? We kind of check in our pride at the door and we try to be these humble individuals, which usually I would like to say that I am fairly humble whenever it comes to my practice and whatnot. But there comes a point in time whenever you can have a little bit more pride in what you're able to accomplish and what you're able to do than we usually do. So I wanted to touch on that. Also on page 88, he says, magic is not something you do, magic is something you are. And I want to skip down a little bit and read these next couple excerpts before continuing on this. This means no matter what you are doing, thinking, or saying, there is always in your mind the idea of how everything is related magically. When magic becomes your way of thinking, acting, and breathing, then and only then will you be a true magician. I disagree with this. I agree with the magic is not something you do, the magic is something that you are. I agree with that. However, I don't think that we necessarily need to be thinking about spell work 24/7. There is something to be said for whenever you release your intentions, and if you're constantly thinking of your intentions or thinking about another intention and whatnot, if you're constantly feeding the beast like that, it can be a little bit daunting and it can be a little bit draining on you as an individual. So I would say that you don't necessarily need to be doing this all the time. there is something to be said about whenever you are going through the mundane life that you are um, you do think of things magically. And yes, that is a wonderful thing, and I think it does help your practice. However, I think being in the mindset of how is this related to magic, trying to think of that all the time is not necessarily always beneficial. Sometimes you end up seeing, connections to things that aren't really there, and you start reading into things that are just plainly the way they are. Um, so I think we can get wrapped around the axle a little bit with our own thoughts and thought processes whenever we're talking about magically thinking. So I wanted to touch on that just a little bit. Um, there's a saying that before enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water, and then after enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water. There's still things that you have to do in the mundane that don't necessarily have anything to do with your spirituality. So I think that thinking on your spirituality and thinking on um, your religious beliefs and thoughts and practices um, constantly can be a hindrance to um, how we live our day to day lives. There is something to be said about, you know, having those moments where you sit and you contemplate, like, hey, I'm making dinner, let's stir in a clockwise motion, feed the energy into the food and whatnot. There's something to be said for that. But if you're constantly, making right hand turns in the car because, you know, you need to be making circles in a clockwise motion, you're not going to really get to your final destination the way that you intended to, or in a timely manner. There's still the mundane that needs to be paid attention to. And to find that balance, I think, is the real challenge. And I think that finding that balance, once you found it, is more beneficial than always thinking on your magical life, or being fully in the magical or fully in the mundane. I think finding that balance is a key part of our day-to-day lives. Moving on, I skipped around here a lot. Page 93. He's talking about the three pillars here, and I have read a couple, or well, I haven't fully read a couple books on Kabbalah, but I'm going through the Chicken Kabbalah right now, and I'm reading through there, and some of the information just goes over your head if you're not paying attention. Like this, it would go over my head if I weren't paying attention. The different spheres of Sephiroth and all that, those are incredibly complex whenever you start studying this stuff. So I'll say this. I don't know if I'm ever going to know them like the back of my hand, because it is so complex and so um, intricate in the way that it is developed that I don't know if I could ever really fully understand the tree of life and every little aspect of it. I'm going to try, though. But the thing I wanted to say on the three pillars is I really like the example he gives about the for these pillars, because you have the pillar of severity, the pillar of mildness, and the pillar of mercy, and each one of those has three or four, depending on which pillar you're looking at, and has different reasons for one way or the other. And your main goal is to keep in that middle ground, is to be balanced with the severity and the mildness. So I really liked that he did that. The other ones were okay. I wasn't as thrilled with those. Um, but the three pillars one, I really resonated with that. Um, the next thing that I wanted to go to was on page 97, where he says, another system holds that there is a full tree of life within each sephira, and I might be mispronouncing that, and I do apologize on that, on the tree of life. Thus, there would be 100 sephirot to deal with. You could have Keter and Keter, Hokmah in Keter, and up to 10 different sephirot in each sephirah. With this system, the worlds get quite complicated. And I really like this. And the reason I like this is it starts sounding like string theory. You can have, this tree of life, and then you have a tree of life within each little branch of that tree of life, and then another one inside of that. It starts seeming like different universes and different strings within string theory. And even though I'm no physicist or theoretical physicist, I'm not that scientifically minded, but I do absolutely salivate over the thought of string theory and what it entails and everything. Absolutely love it. The next thing that I wanted to touch on was on page 99, where he says, in true meditation, the goal is to silence the inner voice. I somewhat disagree. For me, it depends on, like, and I understand his definition here works for him. Anytime that I'm talking meditation, it is, yes, to silence the mind or to achieve a certain goal. And often that goal is, reaching out to spirit or spirits that want to talk to me and see what they want to say and whatnot. But it doesn't necessarily need to be a quieted mind. And I kind of like his method for quieting the mind on page 101, whenever he's talking about scanning and descanning a tarot card as a focal point of your meditative practice. I have an easier way that works for me. And this is something that comes from the Psychic Teachers podcast. Again, as I've said before on this one, if you have not listened to this podcast before, do yourself a favor, go and listen to that podcast. You will not be disappointed. There's like 10 years worth of those podcasts out there. Anyway, the way that one of the hosts on there, her name is Deb, whenever she meditates and she's like, well, you kind of get that monkey mind every once in a while where your mind is like, ooh, shiny, hey, I want to talk about this, or I want to think about this, or something like that. Your mind starts going. It starts working through things. And she says, I just tell those thoughts, stop it, I'm breathing right now. And she focuses on her breath. And it takes a while for you to get to that point where your breathing is not invaded by the monkey mind, and eventually you'll get to that point where those voices in your mind will say, no, they're breathing right now. They're not going to pay attention to me. They're breathing. They're focused on doing this one task, and that's what they're focused on doing. They're not going to pay attention to us. Another way that you can use that, this in a meditative state, is pay attention to that voice that comes in, and then say, okay, you've gotten your attention, now go. And, you do it often enough, eventually it starts to just be second nature, that those things don't even creep in, which makes for a lovely meditation. The next part that I wanted to touch on is on page 105, where he says, it would be a good idea for you to make up a separate tree of life for each of the columns of correspondences. And I have a note here. This would be great for a Book of Shadows entry and cross-referenced with other correspondence charts. And by that I mean, if you have, let's pick something out here. If you have a page in your Book of Shadows on, let's say, color magic, or you know what, let's just say you have it on the Tree of Life. You can have it where this is the Tree of Life, and then you have each one like listed within the different circles. Okay, if you have one on angels, you can have a little mini Tree of Life, kind of like, let's see here, see what, you can have an image like this, but make it real small down in the bottom of it, So then, it's kind of like it's there, and you have that as a reference if you're looking through and you're doing your studying it out of your Book of Shadows, which is sometimes an awesome thing to do. Sometimes I know that I may not reread many witchy books, but I do go through my Book of Shadows usually at least once a year. And I'll flip through there and I'll be like, oh, this is something I should be trying. This is something that I might want to try. If I did a little tiny picture of the Tree of Life with the different circle like highlighted, like this is the circle that you're tuning into on this one, on this color or whatnot, then it would kind of register more. And studying out of your Book of Shadows is something great to do. I would highly suggest it. I don't know if that makes sense the way I'm saying it, or if it just makes sense in my mind. I hope it makes sense to everybody else. Let me know in the comments down below. Sorry about that. I have... Oh, hold 1 second. I have a dental appointment that I need to confirm. So, there, that's good. Anyway, yeah, I have to go get a teeth cleaning on next Thursday. They have to do my teeth cleaning in two sections because I have like little sensitive gums. I have great teeth, sensitive gums, so they can only clean like one side of my mouth at a time before everything starts swelling up and all that. More than what y'all needed to know, but there you go. You know it now. Anyway, also on page 105, he says, "You will never become a magician if all you can do is blindly follow obsolete patterns. Tradition can only be a guide." And I want to skip around here. In a similar manner, you can correct any of the listings on the chart of the Kabbalistic correspondences so that it is correct for you. And I am a huge fan of this. If you go through a correspondence chart such as what is in here, if you go by that correspondence chart, you go through there and you're like, well, let's see. Let's take the tools. Okay. If you go through and you say, well, I don't see the tool being the first, oh geez, where did it go? Well, I don't see the wand as being the fourth Sephiroth. Maybe I see it as being the first. You know, examine that, see why you feel that way, have reasoning as to why you would, in your personal correspondences, put that in there. I am a huge fan of making your own correspondence chart. If something doesn't work for you or if something doesn't jive with you, change it. Your practice is your practice and it's going to evolve with you. You might not be the type of individual that fits in a mold all the time. There is something to be said about the traditional ways of how things are perceived with correspondences, but that does not mean that that's how it always works for everybody for all time. And he does touch on that a little bit in that chapter as well, or in that section as well. The next one I wanted to touch on was on page 109. At the top of the page, he says, "The energy used in the circulation of the body of light ritual is so powerful that it can be used for healing purposes. Simply use visualization to direct the energy that you have learned to control down your arms and out through your hands." And I have a note here, Reiki. This sounds exactly like what Reiki is. Reiki has symbols and whatnot that are part of that that practice, but I think this sounds a lot like Reiki. This sounds like hands-on, just like Reiki, except without the symbols. And of course, you can always do your own symbols and whatnot. Christopher Penzak actually has a Reiki book out there that I think I put it on the shelf. Hold on. Maybe I didn't. Nope. I don't think I put it on the shelf yet. Um, but I did get his Reiki book. It's around here somewhere. It actually might be over there. So, yeah, if it's not on the shelf, which I didn't see it at a glance, it might be over there in a little pile. So, yeah, one of the books that I have on my reading list because I kind of want to get into Reiki. Reiki is not just only about healing, you can do more than that with Reiki. So, I was kind of jazzed whenever I saw this on there. I'm like, oh, I think I know where this is going on that. But he doesn't spend much time on it, and that's okay. You know, this is a primer type of book. It's not necessarily and maybe he goes more into it later on, but he doesn't. This isn't a Reiki specific or healing specific type of book, so I didn't really expect him to go too far into it. The other thing on page 109 that I wanted to touch on is always work in cooperation with medical doctors. Um, Under no circumstances should you ever advise a person to not follow a doctor's advice or not to seek the aid of a professional therapist. If you honestly feel that a particular medical treatment is not helping someone, you can advise that person to get a second opinion from another licensed physician. I'm a big fan of this. Um, and the reason I'm a big fan of this is because there are so many times, like with, let's say Jehovah's Witnesses or, certain sects of Christianity where, they will not they will not have a blood transfusion whenever they need it. They will not take certain vaccines when they need it. Go get vaccinated, please. This, staying masked and being fearful of the outdoors is getting um, quite tiresome. And I'm an introvert, so you think staying in the house and being away from people would be a great thing? It's getting a little tiring. Um, but you see this in a couple sects of Christianity, especially where individuals will not get vaccinated. They will not get, a blood transfusion. They won't receive body parts, organs, if they need an organ or something like that, where they end up dying because of their spiritual belief. And yeah, that's one thing, but another thing is let's be logical about this. If you say have cancer, don't think that sitting with your amethyst all day is really going to have that massive effect that you need in order to get rid of said cancer. Can it help? Possibly, yes. Should it be your one and only thing that you use? No. We have medical treatments that can help you, stuff like that. Take the advice of a qualified and, you know, reputable doctor. So, yeah, seek medical professionals when that is their field of expertise, especially for certain things like that. Moving on is on 115 under the magical motto. And I have here, this is just for the entire section of it. I love the idea of not just a magical name, but also a magical motto. I've not thought of this before for me personally to have my own magical motto. And I think that is a wonderful idea and something that I'm going to explore, um, in the coming days and weeks. I'm gonna try to find my own magical motto. Um, I'm thinking something Latin, like old school Latin, not like Latinx Latin. So, anyway, not Latin as in, yeah, y'all know where I'm going with this. Not Spanish, not Mexican, not South American. Latin as in Roman Catholic Church or Latin. Anyway, that's enough saying Latin. Next thing is on page 116. He says, never let your magical rituals become habits. Always perform them with full awareness. Be present in any ritual, even if you have been doing it daily for years. And I want to put a pin in that for a second. Because he also says, my definition, okay, well, I thought I had something else. Nope, no, okay. I thought I had something else on there that went along with that. But no, I'll take that pin out. Let's address this. I agree with all of this. Never let your magical rituals become habits. Always perform them with a full awareness. Be present in any ritual, even if you have been doing it daily for years. I agree with this. However, I don't fully agree with this. The first sentence of that, of never let your magical rituals become habits, I disagree with that. I think you should totally let your magical rituals become habits as long as the other parts are still followed. Having a daily habit, and I know where he's going here with this is, don't just do something in order to do it because it's something that you do daily. Don't have that. Like in the morning, I'll get up, I'll grab my phone, I'll see what alerts come in from CNN. I'll check eBay to see if anything's sold overnight. I'll check eBay to see if there's anything that I can offer a discount to people for. And, that's a part of daily ritual. I don't really think that much about it beyond, like, if something really catches my attention or whatnot. I don't think, like, sit there and contemplate it and all that. It's just something that becomes a habit of routine. However, if you have a daily ritual that you do, and I'm trying to make certain things daily rituals for me, like doing a daily card reading and whatnot. If you have a daily ritual that you do, approach it with the reverence, the respect that it deserves, because this is not just you doing something to do it. This is something that you are doing because it brings you closer to deity, closer to your spirituality, closer to your guides or higher self, what have you. It brings you closer to those things. It's not something that you just do to do. So I know where he was going with this, but I wanted to make sure that I addressed that because I didn't fully agree with how it was said in the first sentence. How are we looking on time there? Oh, we're only at 30 minutes or 30 some odd minutes, right? Yeah, 34 minutes ish. So yeah, this is actually going to be a shorter video. The next part is also on 116. My definition of a ceremony is a group ritual. That is, it only takes one person to do a ritual while it takes several people to perform a ceremony. And I disagree with his definition, but I think it is important to see how he defines it. For me, a ceremony can be something that is done as with one person. It is a ritual of sorts. It's just the degree of how much pomp and circumstance goes with it. That to me would be the difference between ceremony and ritual. So I disagree with his definition, but I am thankful that he gives a definition. So I think it is important that authors start making this a thing that they do in their books, especially instructional type of books like this one, where a common definition might be different than what terms you're in the way that you're using it in your book. So I am very thankful that he did this. The next part that I wanted to touch on is, let's see. Oh, on 116, camaraderie and socialization, even for a short period of time, are very beneficial. He's talking about the merits of working in a group, and I have a note in here, social media is great for this. Uh, I, I can tell you right now, if I go on Facebook and I go into the Mama Squirrel's Witchy, well, what is it? It's Mama Squirrel's Witchy Facebook group. If I go into that group and I ask a question, I am just about guaranteed that somebody in that group will reply. Um, there's one time whenever I have something that I was going to sell on eBay, and I think I'm going to keep it. But it's a little statue about that big. And if I need to sell it one day, I will. But it's a little tiny statue about that big. And I could not figure out, and I'm like, this has to be something spiritual. It seems like it's something spiritual. After all, it's so shiny. If you get that reference, you're a Buffy fan, and I love you. But, and even more so, you're a Giles fan, and I love you even more. Anyway, um, if I go on there and, so anyway, yeah, that's what I was saying. If I posted that, or since I posted that picture on there, I did get some people saying, you know, I think it might be something of this nature or that nature, something like that. But I know that if I post something like that on there, I'm going to get some sort of response from somebody. Whether it's an I don't know, I think it might be from this region or this spiritual mindset or whatnot. But it is important for me to have that type of group setting where I can go to them with questions to seek answers for, different things that I'm either rolling around in my brain or that uh, I need further advice on. So I think it's important to have, excuse me, that's my 5:30 alarm telling me it's time to start closing up the facility that I work at, but I'm obviously not there today. Anyway, what was I saying? I think it's important to have a group like that available to you. If you don't have a group like that, you have right here. Um, I see all of the comments that are down below. At times, I do respond to them. A lot of times I don't get to respond to them, fast, uh, at a quick rate. However, I eventually do. And I need to start setting time aside on my Mondays like I intended to start going through my emails and my comments and whatnot so I can actually have one specific day a week where I go through that stuff and make a video on it. Anyway, next part that I wanted to touch on was on specialization. Everyone in a magical group, to some degree, must have similar knowledge. That's one of the things that holds the group together. No one, however, can be an expert in all fields of occultism. In a group, one person may be a specialist with tarot, another a specialist with a specialist in astrology, another in occult history, and another in ceremony and ritual. I'm getting tongue-tied, sorry. Thus, the more people you have, the greater the chance that a subject your group needs information on will be known by one of the members. Anyway, okay. So I think this is very important. If you have a group like that, like I was saying on the Facebook group and whatnot, there are people there that have vastly different spiritual lives than I do. They work in a totally different modality that I do. And I think it is important to have those people, even if it's just to ask them a question. Like, I am a crap astrologer. I am terrible whenever it comes to astrology. I cannot remember for the life of me all the different symbols and all the different houses and what each one is and, the timing and blah, 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 all that stuff. That is a special hand that goes into that. So I would definitely need to lean on somebody in order to help me out with that. However, I have more of an adept way of reading tarot, or I have a different modality in communicating with ancestors, or doing ancestor work, or speaking with spirits and whatnot. I have a different adeptness to that, and if somebody needed assistance on that, then I would definitely be there for that. So yeah, that's kind of where I stand. I totally agree with him on this. I think if you have a group, like a social media group especially, where us as Christo-Pagans on this channel, we are all spread out throughout the globe, and it is very difficult for us to find a group to work with in person. So having a group that is on Facebook or something like that, where you can go to them and ask them questions, is a very big thing. And each individual is going to have a different specialty that, you know, we all need to rely on or lean on from time to time. Let's move on to page 119. He says, also the goal of all the people in the magical group must be unified. There must be no ulterior motives for any of the people in the group. And this, I think, is actually my last part that I have. Yes, that's the last thing that I have underlined in here. And I wanted to talk about this for a second, because the reason that I underlined it was because whenever we're talking groups and all that, I thought of the church that we are starting here. And that's one thing that really hit home to me, because whenever I was first conceptualizing this, is I thought, oh, okay, if we're all slightly different in our practices, especially as Christo-Pagans, um, then how are we going to do this? Not everybody views Christ as their patron. Not everybody has Sophia as their goddess. So I was sitting there with these feelings and all that. I'm like, what is the common goal that we are coming together for? And that's whenever I settled on the common goal is to constantly be trying to better ourselves, to constantly be trying to maneuver to a better station in life, or the best me that me can be, that type of thing. And if each one of us gets better and better, and we radiate how we're in constant search for the betterment of ourselves, and we radiate that to the others around us, then that is our ministry, just trying to make individuals strive to be better than they were the day before. And that's not to say that you're not a pretty great person right now, but there's always room for improvement. Because like he said earlier in the chapter, Donald Michael Craig said it earlier in the chapter, there's always somebody out there that's going to be better at something than you. And yeah, I don't disagree with that. So that just gives us a reason to continually try to better ourselves, so that we are the best version of ourselves, in the future, and in every day. Really, we are the best version of ourselves as we continue from day to day. So it doesn't mean that we're not going to have moments where we're not our best selves, but just means that we are constantly getting better. We all get better with age. And hopefully that's because we are constantly trying to evolve ourselves. So that's actually fairly short for the Witchy Book Club series. There's a lot of things in here that didn't really capture my attention, as far as things that I could springboard off of and whatnot. My style on this is not really a teaching type of thing, but as a commentary to the things that we've read. So yeah, reading this would actually have helped you a lot. There is a lot of information in this chapter that is not opinion based, or is not opinion based for me to give commentary on. So yeah, I didn't have as many notes on this one. Anyway, this is a good thing for me because now I have to edit this down and cut out some parts here and there. And yeah, and then I can get on to doing the Tarot Talk video, which I have my notes right here, and do my Table Talk video for next week. So maybe I'll actually be a week ahead of time. Yay. Um, but that's all that I have for today. And if you have anything to add or take away from what I discussed today, if you think I should have gone into one of the other topics in this lesson in particular, or the previous lessons, let's be honest, I might have missed something that should have been sparking in my mind of, hey, I need to discuss this. If you have any input like that, leave those comments down below. You can always hit me up on Twitter. You can hit me up on through my email is down below as well. So you can hit me up in any of those modalities if you please. For those who are Patreon patrons, you can also hit me up on Discord. If you are not on the Discord and you're a patron, let me know. Send me a message on Patreon and I will get you the link. So, yeah, with all that being said, until next time, may you have love, hugs, and ladybugs. Bye bye.